It was the year of fire, the year of destruction, the year we took what was ours. It was a year of rebirth, a year of great bloodletting, the year of pain, and the year of joy. It was a new age. It was the end of history. It was the year everything changed. Welcome to Battle Mallet. Roll the music.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. As always, I am Gruffy, I am Adam. With me today are two people I have caught from the great abyss to sit with me and discuss something, for you have entered Battle Mallet. I will explain the basic idea of Battle Mallet very shortly, but by doing so, I've managed to ruin my own theatrical momentum.
Does it have anything to do with Timmy Mallet or Mallet's Mallet or anything like that?
Well, you know, I actually did consider at one point calling it Mallet, which, if you remember...
Yes! Yes, the Chaos God, yes.
Yeah, going way back.
Way back to the early Fluff and Hammer.
Yeah.
Prehistoric Fluff and Hammer.
Yeah, year one, we often brought up Mallet, the fifth Chaos God.
Yeah, that's proper sort of Stone Age Fluff and Hammer, isn't it?
Yeah, we still had a quiz at the end of the show at that point.
Yeah, wow, we did, didn't we? Jesus.
Yeah, I just make a quiz and try to fuck with yous with it. As I said, I'm Adam. With me, of course, is my long-term suffering Fluff and Hammer partner, George.
Hello there, long suffering and loving it, in classic Clive Barkerian style.
Absolutely, I am the puzzle box and...
the lament configuration.
Do you want power or resurrection? Which do you want? God. Oh man, I really want to see the Hellraiser films redone, but with a slightly cockney working class Cenobites.
Like Cenobites, yeah.
All right, there, you little tinker. What you gonna do? Are you gonna pick some resurrection or some power? Wait.
Cenobite cockney rhyming slang. What would that be like? Bloody hell.
Oh my word.
Yeah, I'm not even going to try, quite frankly.
Would you like some pins?
That's not cockney. That's kind of like Australian.
All right there, mate. You've entered the Australian Cenobites. No, you haven't entered the Australian Cenobites.
They'd like that.
Back up. No, actually, that doesn't
like
help
that.
either.
No, it doesn't, does it? Especially considering you were talking about bears with ball gags before we came on.
Absolutely. My reading of Goldilocks is not the same as everyone else's.
No, clearly.
And of course, we have Big Swingin' D, long-term sufferer of the Fluff and Hammer.
Can I go back to the void yet? It was peaceful there.
Yeah, it's probably a bit more clement there, wasn't it, to be honest?
You can go back to the void when you've had your pudding.
Okay. Again, I'm getting Slaneshi vibes, and it's,
Both unsettling and relaxing.
Yeah, at the same time.
Yeah. Calling it Rattlsack. No.
No.
Okay.
You were trying to come up with a spoonerism.
I did, and then I realised what I was about to say was rattle-sexing, and just went...
Yeah, that does
dear.
sound like a Slaneshi thing, definitely. That sounds like the name of a Slaneshi demon, actually.
I was more thinking it's going to be the name of my my next jazz band. It's
It could be both.
Yeah.
Could be both,
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Smooth Hour with rattle-sexing.
That sounds like the kind of name you'd generate from the ROC demon name generators.
Fulgrim's message board name.
Yeah.
I mean...
Not like, it'd be Bishy Snake Boy 01 or something, wouldn't it,
Big Dick Snake Man.
When
Anyhow...
I mean, before you stop, when are we going to get him? Come on.
Well, if you
Come
don't
on.
Mind, if you're sick of waiting for GW, here's a hint. Merce Miniatures, one of my favourite miniatures makers, have a line called Darklands.
Yeah.
And in it, they've got a faction that's all kind of half human, half snake, multi-armed weirdos.
Oh, so like Fulgrim then?
Yeah, yeah. The leader of which has 4 arms, 4 swords, and is a very pretty boy.
Uh,
No wings, but that's an easy fix.
Oh, that's an easy fix. Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. He's currently 20 quid because they're doing a half-price Nobles promotion.
God. Can you imagine how much Fulgrim is going to be when he eventually hits? He's going to be a lot of money.
He's going to be a very big boy.
He's going to be an expensive boy, he is.
Imagine, if you will.
I was going to say then, it's okay, I'm used to expensive boys. I'm not going to say that because I'm above that. Totally above it.
There's a way of turning that round, actually, to make sense. You have been to TFN multiple times.
I
you have spent
indeed.
time in the Transformers Nation buy and sell room, and you do own a Scorponok. So you are indeed used to expensive boys.
I'm used to the expensive boys, yes.
Yes, Scorponok is an expensive boy. Moving the hell on quickly.
Swiftly.
So tonight we're going to be talking about the End and the Death Part 1. I'm doing this right now. I'm just going to put this right now in stone. It's recorded. It is currently 2046 on the 16th of May 2023. I'm placing a bet that at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning on the 17th of the 5th 2023, End in the Death Part 2 gets announced because we have finally got around to doing this episode.
Yeah, it's probably true.
I am going to place that right there. And if it doesn't, I'm still going to leave it in because I bet you, because I've said it, it's going to wait till the day after. I fucking bet you. Right.
You know what? I mean, like, we've got so much that we really want to do that we never have. Like the first Heretic, for example. We really want to do that, don't we? But we just haven't got around to it. When we get to do it, you know that Aaron Dembski-Bowden is going to announce his new Word Bearers 40k trilogy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things. I'm fairly sure that one of the reasons we haven't done various things over the years is because the wizards at GW put out these waves to try and stop you from doing it in order for them to get stuff, all the ducks in a row and get stuff released just in time, just to piss me off.
It is a sort of chicken and egg thing, isn't it? It does feel like whenever we talk about anything on this show, particularly things that you want to happen, Adam, they happen. Like a few, or at least a week after. It's really strange. It's uncanny, actually.
I actually wrote about that for this week's Sunday Musings.
Yeah, it is it's that consistent that it's actually worth writing about, right?
Absolutely. I had to make a little disclaimer, though, that I don't actually think that this is anything other than coincidence. No. I'm not suffering from psychosis.
But that said, it is uncanny, isn't it? It's very strange.
Oh,
yeah. It's like armies will happen once I've finished making the army.
Yeah, it's the oddest thing, isn't it? Things like Grots and Beastmen in 40k, Votan. You know, it's really weird.
And so I did my Ragnar Blackmane conversion, and a matter of days later, they announced Primaris version of him.
Yeah, of course.
I'd only been waiting 20 years for it.
It's been a long time. Yeah, he's a long-suffering mini, weren't he? Eh? He really was.
And then they go, oh, by the way, ta-da! It's like, bastards.
Here's the bigger version that cut off Garskull Thracker's head. He got better, but you know.
I still don't know how I feel about Ragnar Blackmane being Garskull's nemesis now.
Yeah,
it goes back to their original battle report, which is something, but it don't feel right.
There's that. I mean, it's for the vast majority of time we've been in the hobby, it's always been Yarick, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And Garthkull. So it's. I mean, I can understand why they did it because it doesn't really make sense anymore, does it? You know, those two going toe to toe. I mean, in his current form, I mean, Garskull would just step on him.
Yeah.
That'd be it, wouldn't it? You know.
Well, it's why I'm fairly sure that when this new Imperial Guard Codex comes out for 10th, one of the things you'll do is Yarick the Dreadnought, and it's just going to it's going to be slightly bigger than Garskull, and it's just going to be there to annoy him. It's just
I'm all for that kind of thing. Like maybe they could bring back like they've done with Sarka Creed, a descendant of.
Yeah. Oh man, that would be awesome. Yarick's grandson or something, who's
Or
like,
granddaughter, wouldn't that be
Yeah.
ace? Bloody hell, I'd love to see that. Yarick's granddaughter.
yeah,
It's actually kind of cool how they've been positioning the timeline of the 40 Years Plenary, because they've pretty much made the Sabbath World Crusades a modern component
Yes.
as well, with Yarrick being known to Gaunt and Gaunt being a major figure in that, and with the wibbly wobbly timey-wiminess of everything. I mean, I have a suspicion of where Abnett's various 40k projects are going,
Mhm.
because have you guys read Penitent or the latest Gaunt's
No,
Ghost?
Not yet.
I haven't.
No.
Not yet, unfortunately.
Okay, not so much for Gaunt's Ghost, but certainly in Penitent, which is there's one more Beckwin book to go in his Inquisition series,
Mhm.
Pandemonium.
Mhm.
But there's stuff that he mentions quite extensively in Penitent that he's come back to in The End of the Death Part 1.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
That's interesting. I mean, this is something they seem to allow Abnett to do, isn't it? You know, they give him a lot of free reign to muck about with the universe.
Well, the last page of Penitent, I've reread it so many times because
Mhm.
it's basically trying to identify. The whole book's basically decoding
Mhm.
a bit of data, and it turns out at the end it's a name,
Oh, interesting.
but the name is millions of words long.
Oh, how fascinating.
Would you like to be spoiled as to what the name is?
Yeah, go on. Go for it. I'm
It's
okay. You okay, Adam?
Constantine
I'm fine.
Valdor.
Oh! Oh, okay.
That, which is the name they've deciphered, is the name of the King in Yellow. That's been the overarching
Mhm.
presence of the Beckwin book so far.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
someone that Eisenhorn and Ravner have both been. They've been crossing over with their plans for 6, 7 books before this.
So it feels like he's got a plan, right? There's some
yes.
vast story being told here. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, the Lovecraftian vibes are obvious, you know.
Which kind of ties into, well, Valdor's journey in End of the Death, funny enough.
Absolutely it does.
Yeah.
Absolutely it does.
We get to see Valdor using his spear, which
could be, I mean, it's an ambiguous bit of kit, that, isn't it? I mean, okay, it has a very particular function, but considering where he's using it for the most part in the End and the Death, it may not be the best idea.
No.
Chaos does have
interesting
this habit of corrupting, doesn't it? You know,
Yeah.
anything it touches.
Yeah.
You don't want to be absorbing information about chaos. That's not a good idea.
What are you talking about? That's how Jacques Draco found out everything he needed to know, and as we all know, Jacques Draco was a hero.
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay, well, I've got a question for you both.
of course.
Okay.
So the End and the Death is the end, as we all can tell, of the Horus Heresy series, which has been
Yeah.
going for the last 15 years now.
Yes.
My God, I can
know.
still remember the day I bought Horus Rising and False Gods and sat down and read them. I can still remember it.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
absolutely. What's even more bizarre is that, as we've discovered this week, George, the Horus Heresy itself only takes place over about 7 years.
Yeah, it's not massively long.
No, a decade at most. Which means, for all intents and purposes, the books have been coming out for twice the amount of time that the Horus Heresy took place.
See, I think that's the MASH effect, but as Chris pointed out in chat, he calls it more of a commando effect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Where commando's been running for 10 times the length of conflict it's based around.
Yep.
Yes, I mean, you also have to take into account like the innate qualities of the universe. I mean, this is something the End and the Death comments upon. Of course, I love that thing in the End and the Death where he's concentrating on the metaphysics of what's happening, and time is breaking down.
Yeah,
around
the
Terra.
soul's just sinking into the warp slowly.
Awesome. The
It's just
notion
a bonkers idea as well.
And it makes this conflict even more profound than it ever was before, because that wasn't happening in the original telling of the story. The demons were just sort of like manifesting on Terra. Now it's a focal point where the warp is literally subsuming reality, and that's fucking awesome.
Yeah, and it's kind of fascinating to me that it's not just that it's subsuming reality, but that the Imperial defenders are actually finding ways to use it to their advantage.
Use it, right? Like the
They
time
use it.
distorting effects and the distance distorting effects.
If time's running longer, let's use it. Let's make every bullet and every life count.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If space is starting to collapse in on itself and you can walk from one point and then suddenly appear somewhere else miles away,
Yeah.
let's use it. It's clearly something's guiding us. Let's work with it. And it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, this is very interesting.
This is very cool.
This is
right?
combat at a whole nother level.
Yeah, and I love the way he mixes that with his historical allusions as well, because like a lot of this book is really solid, isn't it? It's very down and dirty. It is almost like it's written almost like a fictionalized historical war, basically.
I mean, so much of it is snapshots of individual defenders.
That's it.
Normally at the end of their life, frankly.
Yeah.
A lot of them we don't get much part
in terrible conditions. I mean, one of the things the book really emphasizes is just how down and dirty this war has got, where nobody knows what they're fighting for anymore on either side. Everybody is starving, dirty, diseased. There's nothing they can do.
One of the bits from, I think it was first described its way back in Codex Imperialis from the second edition box, was that the fighting became street to street, and even the gardens of the Imperial Palace, soldiers would be shot as they were just running to a pond to take a sip of water.
Yeah.
And deadly firefights. And it's just like, that's what this is. This is everyone at their last. The defenders have got nothing left to give, but, well, they found something.
Yeah.
And for all 40K's dystopian as hell, that's actually, it's wonderful to read, if that makes sense.
It's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, to see a lot of characters who we've been following now. Some we've barely followed outside of Siege of Terror. They've appeared in this series and that's it.
Yeah.
Others we've been following for most of the course of the Heresy.
Absolutely, some of them from the very beginning. They were characters in the very first book.
Yeah, I mean Euphrates Keeler.
Euphrates Keeler, absolutely.
And especially because her journey, this is really her last appearance prior to this, chronologically, would have been in the Garrow.
Yeah, which was ages ago. Right?
God.
And that is a hell of a novella in its own right for what it does with her.
Yeah.
So at this point where she's resigned to her sainthood.
Yeah, she's one of the more fascinating characters actually, because she is effectively a living saint of the Emperor, isn't she? She's the beginning of the ecclesiarchy. That's another thing that's being done with this series. They're setting up everything that will become the institutions of the Imperium. So you can see the sort of the proto Grey Knights here. You can see the proto ecclesiarchy and so on and so forth. She's the original saint of the Emperor, isn't she? But the way she regards it is fascinating.
Yeah, because originally she was quite, I don't want to say taken, but when she first began manifesting these abilities back in the initial trilogy that kicked things off, she was very much in awe of what she could do.
Yeah.
And now she's very much over it.
Yeah, very over it.
Very much so.
Very, very over it. Yeah. Well, she's seen a lot, hasn't she,
absolutely.
She's been across the galaxy and she's seen the darkest stuff happen. She was present, I believe, on the Vengeful Spirit when when the Sons of Horus bring Horus back from Davin, and the remembrances are all cluttering around them, and they end up like bludgeoning them to death. She saw that.
Yeah.
So she was there at the very beginning of the descent, into disgrace. It's kind of cool.
Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to pick the book apart piece by piece by bringing things that we want to talk about out, instead of trying to go through the thing from A to B.
That
Because
won't work. No, it needs to be thematic.
Yeah.
It needs to be thematic.
Because if we try to just go through the entirety of the book as is, we will have the longest podcast we've ever done, and we wanted a 3.5-hour show. I'm not in for doing that tonight. But I really like to know, in the run-up to this book, not including the Siege of Terror, because I've got a second follow-up question.
Okay.
Spoilers. What's been the standout parts of the Horus Heresy as a series for you guys so far?
Oh, interesting. It's been the stuff really that's inverted the background a little bit. Stuff like the first heretic, which and Aurelian and Betrayer. So, but effectively the Word Bearers trilogy, which takes the essence of the Word Bearers as they appear in like the Codex background, which is always from a sort of like imperial slant, isn't it? It's always from that perspective, where they're fanatics and zealots and monsters and lunatics, and actually transforms them, it alters them a little bit, whereby they're actually considered metaphysicians, and they actually are looking for the truth of this universe, and more than that, they find it.
Yes.
Yeah.
They find it, because whatever else you want to say about chaos, it is a true metaphysics of this universe. Those gods exist, and they're real, and they affect reality. And I love that. Lorgar was a complete surprise to me in this series. Lorgar, who is not a frothing fanatic or lunatic at all.
No, he's actually quite a level-headed character who just takes a couple of steps in the wrong path. Well,
or the right path, depending on how you look at it, because he gets what he wants. Lorgar is absolutely justified by the end of the heresy, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely he is. Everything.
It's an interesting thing, and I love the way Aaron Dembski Bowden teases that out of the character, where he will not go down the easy route of just making him like frothing and blind and a lunatic. He is considered, and he is phenomenally intelligent. I would say probably like almost on Magnus's level in terms of his intelligence. And is one of the more considered Primarchs. He is willing to sit back and say, I will take the universe as it comes,
Yeah.
He just has the two worst advisors in the universe.
Although, by the time of Betrayer, he's transcended them. He makes that very clear, he is far more knowledgeable about the nature of chaos and the warp by that point than they are. And he's turned the tables on them. He's kind of playing them by that point.
Yeah.
I just want to point out, just to give people an idea how much I dislike Craig, I would much rather be in a room with Erebus than Craig. But
for me, it's been stuff like that. It's been stuff that's revealed details that haven't been there before, or teased out, re-emphasized elements that were diminished before. So things like the Unremembered Empire, which was not part of the original fluff at all, but makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense,
Especially
I really like that.
With what we've gotten of Gilliman's character in these books, because so much of what they did, starting in Betrayal at Kelf. Betrayal at Kelf?
It was, I think. Yes, that's the beginning of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is where we first got a real flavour for the Ultramarines' character in the horror setting.
Yes.
And Gilliman in particular.
Well, Gilliman's interesting because he is one of the very few loyalist Primarchs who actually comes off well in the Horus Heresy. Everything he does makes sense. It's considered. It is not born out of spite or out of bitterness or out of competition with his brothers or anything like that. Everything he does makes perfect sense, and he is certainly one of the more considered of the Imperial Primarchs.
Well, I mean, I have certain biases because of they're my favorite faction, but Russ, I think he starts off. Prospero breaks him as well.
Yeah, that's interesting.
The rest of Heresy is basically him reckoning with that,
almost atoning. There's almost like after Prospero burns, there's a quality to him that he's almost on like a death quest.
Absolutely. I mean, he effectively uses a lot of the more bloodthirsty elements of the wolves. he uses them as a sacrifice to save the rest of the Legion from the Alpha Legion.
From the Alpha Legion, yeah.
And then his journey later on, where he does eventually face Horus with his spear, and that's another fascinating thing. Him and that bloody spear, which
yeah, right.
is great. But the whole thing where his entire journey across the heresy is one of atonement and altering the Legion's character. Because
Yeah.
looking at the wolves as they are as the route in the Horus Heresy compared to what we've known about in the fluff in the 41st millennium, where they're this beloved chapter of defenders of the people.
They're egalitarian in the 41st millennium, aren't they? They actually sometimes stand up against the wider Imperium. You know, they're at odds with like the Inquisition a lot of the time.
They're one of the few chapters that truly embraces their separation from the Imperium the fact that they are a separate entity from the Imperium itself. Their only real command is from the Emperor.
Yeah.
Which a lot of chapters don't really get into. And it's fascinating to see how they get there from where we meet them in the Heresy.
Yeah, that's interesting. Because, of course, they were slightly rejigged in the Heresy to be the Emperor's executioners, of course. That wasn't really part of their character before this point. It's just something, but it was there. Yeah. Because they were obviously in the original background, they were used to devastate Prospero, which makes sense. But it was never really emphasized that this is what they do. This is actually their function, you know. The Alpha Legion you brought up, they're another really great example. One of the more, before the Horus Heresy, easily one of the least popular Chaos Legions, because there was not much to them. They were just like the guerrilla warfare fighters. That's what they did. They were the saboteurs. That's what they used to do. They were the saboteurs in blue armor with the Hydra logo. That was it. Legion comes along and completely transforms them.
Yep. And you know what's fascinating? So much of what we discussed it. Unremembered Empire, Burning of Prospero, Legion. It's that bloody Abnett man again.
It's Abnett, yeah. It's Abnett doing that stuff. Like I said, he seems to have a real license with Games Workshop. They seem to allow him to come in and change things, you know, which is good, by the way, because the changes that he introduces are generally pretty damn awesome.
Yeah.
One of the things I find absolutely fascinating about how the Horus Heresy has come along is how much they took from that original 2 to 3 page Will King writing that came in Adeptus Titanicus.
Yeah.
And you can see how they've expanded everything out.
Isn't it interesting? It's like they've written backwards from it, right? Yeah. They've taken details that are only like, all they are minor plot details, and written them backwards. So there's going to be a character who is sacrificed at the end of this story. The Space Marine who breaks in on the fight between the Emperor and Horus. Yeah. It's Loken. It's going to be fucking Loken, isn't it?
It has to be at this point.
Because everyone expects it to be Ollie Pierce.
Right, it's gonna be fucking Loken. You just know it is, right?
Which, if you remember, originally, before they turned it into the Unnamed Guardsman, it was a unnamed guy in a Terminator armor.
That's right, yes. That's right, yeah.
And that's my guess, is you're going to see Loken turn up and just get absolutely smooshed.
Just murdered by Horus, which would make sense. You know, it would make sense for his character to be that martyr. Would make perfect sense, given his origins, given who he is, for Horus to murder one of his own most beloved sons. Let's not, you know, he was part of the Mournival.
Yep.
You know? One of the highest of the Legion. One of the
last member that Horus appointed before he fell.
Yeah, right.
So the last one that he had, it was clear of mind when he selected him.
Yeah, thematically, it would just draw everything together. It would make, and of course, given we're jumping forward a bit, but given the ending of the End and the Death, what does Abnett do? Well, he tries to get him aboard the Vengeful Spirit, doesn't he? You know, so it's like,
I was punching the air when that moment happened. But we'll get to that in a minute.
What I like about it is the fact that Abnett doesn't try to play it coy. He kind of like, he knows that people who know the story know where this is going.
Mhm.
Absolutely. He's been playing for the fans for the last 13 years of this stuff. He
Yeah.
knows. I don't want to say that they knew where they were going, because I don't think anyone knew the
No.
Horus Heresy would blow up like it did.
No.
But I'm sure he must have had a book of notes of where he wanted to take
Yeah,
things.
I think
And he's
so.
just been slowly scheduling and offering a little. And we know it's been a very collaborative process with the authors of Doom the Heresy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of them were going, here's this character. Can you get him to here for us? And can you try this idea? This will pay off. Trust me.
Mhm.
And it's. We've all read a lot of tie-in fiction over the years.
Oh
but
my goodness.
This,
Yeah.
for Horus Heresy, it's had its downs, but it's had more ups.
I would say so. It's been, on the whole, a very well written series of not just pulp science fiction, although there's plenty of that going on, and it's really good pulp science fiction, by the way, for the most
Yeah.
part. But there are stories in it that I would say are genuinely good science fiction, like genuinely good metaphysical science fiction.
Absolutely.
Aurelian, I would hold up against many sort of, like, you know, what people would consider to be serious science fiction or serious metaphysical horror. It's a fabulous book, that is.
Well, just the tone we get at the very start of the Heresy, of a
Yeah.
very high science fiction setting that's got a little bit of grimdark around the edges.
Mhm. Yeah.
But it seems like things are coming into the light, and then we know it's all going to go downhill, and it's been a journey of just going, oh, just take this turning, please. You can be better. You can be better. It's like, oh, god damn it!
And it just isn't going to happen, right? It just isn't going to happen. And I love the way it's taken such pains. I mean, I will say this: the traitor Primarchs have had all the songs in the Horus Heresy, haven't they?
Yeah.
A lot of the loyalist Primarchs have been given a little bit of short shrift, you know, like Rogel. Really, Rogel came into his own in the Siege of Terror. He's actually a really good character in the Siege of Terror, but up until that point, he didn't have a great deal to do.
No, he was basically just an imperial asshole for a lot of it.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you know, the first we see of him is really when he's punching Garrow for telling him the truth, right?
Yep.
Because he won't listen.
Yep, and I think next time we see him, he's chewing out Sigismund for.
Yes. for being Sigismund, you know.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
What's that? I mean, Korax. He's had some good. What he's had has been good, but
it hasn't been much of him. But the traitor Primarchs, oh my god, they've really. I mean, obviously, people. There is going to be more enthusiasm for them because writing the fall of a character, writing a villain, is loads of fun, isn't it? It's loads of fun. But I'm still shocked to the depths they go with some of them.
Oh yeah, I mean, Fulgrim's probably the shallowest of them all, which. It's completely in character. He falls for the most shallow of reason.
Completely in character. But even with him, they go to this place that really shocks me. Like in Angel Exterminatus, when he ascends, when he's in the midst of ascending, you get this wonderful metaphysics. For him, this is amazing.
Yeah.
This is the best thing ever. When he does ascend and becomes the demon Primarch of Slaanesh at the end, he sees all of creation. He sees all of reality from the perspective of an immortal. And it is this moment of the most sublime ecstasy. It is wonderful. And you read it and you think, I could go for that. That sounds good. You know, you almost like feel, I can understand this. I can understand why you would turn to chaos. I can understand for that chance.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, Angron, of course, probably has the most tragic backstory in all of 40k.
Arguably the most simplistic, least interesting character from Chaos Primarchs. Suddenly, in Aaron Dembski-Bowden's hands, becomes the most interesting, the most complex, the most tragic, the one with the most pathos. And this is another thing that's happened with the Horus Heresy. It has bled over into 40k. So details that didn't exist before. For example, stuff like the World Eater's homeworld of Nuceria. That didn't exist before. That did not exist before this. Awesome stuff.
It was just redacted, I think, originally.
Yeah, you didn't have. Well, they didn't even mention it. They didn't even mention the World Eater's homeworld.
Most of the others had mention of it, but the World Eater was just like.
Yep. Whatever.
And the World Eaters themselves. I mean, where they came from is the most. Because originally, they pitched them in one. I think it was in the Angron novella.
Mhm.
They showed them prior to the Legion fully becoming fitted with the butcher's nails,
Mhm.
and you see them as arguably the most disciplined of the legions, the ones
Right.
who have the most self-control, who
Mm-hmm.
fight in very tight, regimented formations on the battlefield.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, this is something people often don't realize. The butcher's nails themselves are introduced in the Horus Heresy
Yeah, and they're probably
as
one
a
of the
concept.
biggest changes to the law that you'll find.
Absolutely. I mean, there was vague mention in their background before that they used
Psychosurgery and stuff, but
psychosurgery,
it was
right?
never really.
It wasn't detailed. It wasn't
Yeah.
specified. It wasn't like a specific device or process. But here, you get the butcher's nails, which are now part of the background, part of the rules, part of their equipment. You know.
Yeah. And
It's-
every world eater character under fluff now, it's a defining feature for them, and it's
Yeah, I mean, it's influenced
genuine
models for God's sake, right? I mean, like the new World Eaters range, all of them have the butcher's nails, including Angron. That's what amazes me. That is, I mean, the way the fluff, the background that they've written, the narrative has influenced the physical aspects of the game. You know,
Yeah.
that's incredible. It's so powerful. I love that. I love that to bits.
I think as well, it's worth saying that one of the things the Horus Heresy has done, and it's done very, very well, is introduce you to a lot of characters that you probably haven't given a huge amount of thought to over the years. I mean, before this, did anyone really consider what Vulcan was like?
Yeah.
You know, and Vulcan's come out of it as being one of the more strong characters that you'd ever find in any Black Library fiction. You know, Vulcan's an incredible character.
He really is. Ugati Khan, of course, really given, really one of the least detailed in terms of character Primarchs out there before these books.
And they leaned into that. They made him a very enigmatic character to start with as well.
Yeah,
and they slowly filled in the gaps. And I mean, to the point where I'll be honest, he might be my favorite Heresy of Primarch.
He's really good. I like him a lot. I must admit. I mean,
Yeah.
my favorite amongst the loyalists is always probably going to be Lionel Johnson because I like him. But look what they've done with him as well. They've really leaned into that ambiguity.
Yeah.
Where you don't really know where he stands. I mean, there's that wonderful detail that he, right up until the beginning of the Unremembered Empire, he doesn't know who he's going to side with in the war.
Yeah. Well, he gives off those siege engines to Perturabo.
Yeah, right, he does. It's like, ooh, okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But again, they played the line off beautifully because they had, was it? No, it was in the Rush Primarch's novella.
Mm-hmm.
They jump forward to, because we see his and Lion's famous fist fight.
We do.
At the start of their feud, which is a wonderfully written piece in itself. But then it jumps forward to post-heresy, where Russ basically lets Lion impale him.
Yeah.
And the Lion's in tears. He's a blubbering mess.
It's interesting, right?
And that's really... Because we haven't read about it in... We know what happens, but we haven't actually had any fiction about it yet.
No.
So that's our last meeting of time we see the Lion until Son of the Forest.
All right, until 40k, yeah.
And that version of the Lion from that book, to me, that's informed absolutely by what happened at the end of that scene of post-heresy.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a Lion who's much more aware of his own flaws, much more contemplative.
Yep.
And in some of his reminiscences about his brothers, it was something I realised that Russ and Johnson actually have the most similar backstory of Primarchs.
Very similar, right?
Both marooned on Death Worlds, both raised... Russ admittedly had a pack of wolves to raise him, but neither of them had human contact until they were pretty much adults.
Yeah.
The other Primarchs all had certain amounts of human contact prior to...
It's true.
In their development, even if, say, in Kurz's case, it was not great.
I was going to say, Kurz is going, You were raised by wolves? I wish I was raised by wolves.
Yeah.
All right. Because it's actually because he grew up in a world where there was nothing to raise him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
Altarion obviously was raised by those alien things,
Yeah.
those weird overlords, whatever the
Mm.
hell they are.
But they all kind of like had cultures that raised them, apart from those two.
Yeah, it's true.
So and they're very similar dynamics there, because Russ they both put on an axe.
Yeah.
The lion puts on this face of civility,
Mhm.
and whilst Russ plays up his barbarian
Yeah.
nature. Where in actuality, it's why in the pre-heresy fluff that we had, it was always the lion and Russ coming to relieve the Emperor.
Yeah, the lion and the wolf.
Whereas now they've made it much more the lion, Gilliman,
Yes.
plus Russ and Korax.
Yeah, that's right.
Those two very much more of an afterthought. It's just been really interesting.
It has the way it's expanded these characters who were just really up until this point archetypes.
Yeah.
You know, and made them characters. I mean, one of my absolute favorites, Magnus. Magnus is, I mean, they've really lent it, whether by intention or not, but this notion that Magnus did nothing wrong. I mean, yeah, he did a few things wrong, but they've really lent into the humanity of him.
Yeah.
You know?
They've made choices ones that you can understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
He might make a wrong choice, but you understand why he's chosen what he has.
That's right. They're the wrong choices for the right reasons.
Yes.
That's generally it, isn't it? I mean, and also, I mean, again, expanding upon this notion that it wasn't just in the original fluff, the Emperor just overreacts. You know, he doesn't try to. The thing that Magnus does in the original fluff is he just uses his psychic powers to try and warn the Emperor about Horus, but the Emperor won't listen because it's psychic, it's tainted by chaos. Now, in the Horus Heresy, they've deepened that, they've expounded upon it so that Magnus inadvertently, by the way, disrupts the experiment in the dungeon beneath the Imperial Palace, which is great. I mean, that's wonderful. There's a great moment in 1,000 Suns towards the end when Magnus emerges in his spirit form from the portal, the webway portal, and he's almost like an echo of his future demonic self. He's massive and he's fiery, and there's this moment of psychic communication between him and the Emperor, and Magnus knows that he's fucked up. Big style. And that's it. It's wonderful. It's this wonderful moment of self-realization. But later on, it's echoed. There's this great moment where Zeech talks directly to him. You know, where he finally makes contact with Zeech. And Zeech is like, well, you know, I'm going to actually talk straight with you for once. Your father would have enslaved you to sit on that damn throne of his forever, fighting my demons. Forever. That's what you would have been doing. You would have been a slave. Even in the most ideal manifestation of this universe, you would have been a slave. I am going to recreate you. You are going to be everything you ever wanted to be. You are going to be arcane knowledge made manifest. Doesn't that sound nice?
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, yeah, actually.
You get what he's done. But even then, Magnus doesn't fully fall until...
No, later on.
Fury of... Is it Fury of Magnus?
It's Fury of... Is it Fury of Magnus? I don't...
It's the Siege of Terra Novella that he's in.
It is, that's right. Because he gets in, doesn't he? He gets into the Imperial Palace. Right, wow.
He only fully falls because he tries to get past Vulcan, who pummels the shit out of him.
Yeah, he ends up killing Malkador, doesn't he? I mean, it doesn't mean anything because Malkador's a perpetual, but you know.
No, this would have been Malkador's final death.
Is this his final? Is it? That's right. Yes.
Because there was another perpetual there, who I can't remember her name. So I forgot about the woman who she always came back.
Yeah.
In another location, she was with Malkador at that time, and she got gunned down by Magnus's 1,000 Sons that were with him. Malkador got burnt to
nothing.
Blackened skeleton.
To nothing. Yeah.
And she gave up her remaining lives to bring Malkador back.
Oh, right. So that would have been his end, you know?
Yeah, that would have been his end.
Wow. So, that's when Magnus fully accepts, isn't it? That's when he becomes the deep Trimarch of Zeech.
Not even that point. It's when he gets into the throne room, tries to approach the Emperor to speak to him, and Vulcan stops him.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if it was one of Magnus' sons dies or one of Vulcan's sons dies. I think it's one of Vulcan's sons dies because Vulcan then basically stops messing around and goes full ham.
Yeah.
And Magnus has no choice at that point. He has to fall because that's what boots him out of the palace entirely.
Yeah. Yeah, because of course he can't be in. There's a demon, he can't be there, right?
Rejects him entirely at that point.
Yeah,
So
that's very cool.
It's actually kind of interesting to realise that, because before so much of it was that the demon Primarchs arrived on Terra at the siege in their full power.
In their full forms, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean,